The first sighting. The patrol ship Varlik drifted in the quiet darkness of space, its sensors sweeping the void for any sign of disturbance. It was supposed to be a routine mission, checking for smugglers, lost traders, or occasional pirate activity. Nothing out of the ordinary. Commander Reltek leaned back in his chair, staring at the data screen. His crew moved with practiced boredom, running scans, marking empty sectors, and preparing for another uneventful cycle. But then, something changed. "Commander," a young officer called out, her voice tight with confusion. "I'm picking up something." Reltek sighed. "Be specific, Lieutenant." I don't know," she admitted, staring at the readings. "It's massive. Too big for any ship in our database. And it's just sitting there. No movement. No signals. Nothing." Reltek frowned and leaned forward. A ship that size should have been impossible to miss. Yet there it was, completely undetected until now. "Send a standard identification request," he ordered. The officer nodded and transmitted the message. Seconds passed. Then minutes. No response. "Try again," Reltek said, a knot tightening in his chest. Still nothing. A chill spread through the bridge. Every species in the galaxy followed the same protocol. When a ship was hailed, it responded. But this one, silent. "Bring it on screen," he ordered. The view screen flickered, and the crew stopped breathing. There in the distance floated the most terrifying ship any of them had ever seen. A ship unlike any other. It was enormous, easily larger than a dreadnought, yet sleek and efficient. Its dark hull absorbed light rather than reflected it, making it almost invisible against the void. Strange patterns ran along its surface, shifting like liquid metal. "It doesn't match any known ship design," the officer whispered. "No known energy readings either," another added. "It's not using standard plasma drives. It's different." Reltek's instincts screamed at him. This was not a normal vessel. "Alert the fleet," he ordered. "We may have a first contact situation." The comms officer hesitated. "Commander, if this is a new species, why aren't they responding? Why aren't they doing anything?" Reltek had no answer. The ship just sat there, watching, waiting. An impossible presence. High Admiral Xarik of the Galactic Fleet received the distress call within minutes. He had been in countless battles, faced impossible odds and crushed rebellions. But when he saw the transmission from Reltek's patrol ship, he felt something he had never felt before. Uncertainty. An unknown ship. Unresponsive. No record in any database. No communication. No demands. And worst of all, it had appeared in their sector without detection. "This isn't just a ship," Xarik murmured. "This is a message." The fleet moved into formation. Dozens of warships surrounded the unknown vessel, weapons locked on. This was standard procedure. Any unidentified entity had to submit to scans or be considered a threat. But the moment they got too close, every system on every warship shut down. Engines powered off. Weapons went cold. Shields collapsed. The fleet was frozen in space. And then, for the first time, the warship reacted. A simple message appeared on every screen, in every language known to the galaxy. "We are here. We are watching." Admiral Xarik's hands clenched into fists. This was not a first contact mission. This was something else entirely. The fleet floated helplessly in the dark. Engines offline. Weapons useless. Shields non-existent. A silent fear spread through the crew of every ship as they realized the terrifying truth. They were at the mercy of the unknown warship. Admiral Xarik gritted his teeth, forcing himself to stay calm. His mind raced through every possibility. Was this an attack? A warning? A demonstration of power? No matter the answer, one thing was certain. This was no ordinary enemy. The mysterious ship still hadn't fired a single shot. It hadn't made a single demand. It just existed, effortlessly disabling an entire battle fleet. That alone made it more dangerous than anything the galaxy had ever seen. "Status report," Xeric barked. His officers scrambled to respond. "Main power is completely drained, sir," one of them shouted. "Backup systems are unresponsive. Weapons are dead," another called out. "Nothing's working." Xeric turned toward his lead technician. "What about communications?" The officer swallowed hard. "We still have basic comms, Admiral, but we can't send any messages outside the system." A cold realization settled over him. This thing didn't just disable them. It had cut them off from the rest of the galaxy. His gaze locked onto the dark warship outside the viewport. Whoever they were, they'd wanted the galaxy to see them, but not to interfere. A new message flashed across every screen. "You are not prepared." Silence filled the bridge. Officers exchanged nervous glances. Xeric clenched his fists. Prepared for what? Then, for the first time, the unknown ship moved. It wasn't a slow drift or a cautious maneuver. It vanished. One moment it was there, looming over them like a god of war. The next, it was gone, without a trace. And just as suddenly as it had disappeared, the fleet's systems came back online. Power surged through the warships. Engines roared to life. Shields flickered back on. Weapons were once again armed. It was over. But Admiral Xeric knew this was just the beginning. Admiral Xeric sat in silence, staring at the screen where the unknown warship had been just moments ago. His crew rushed to restore full operational control, their voices filled with a mix of relief and confusion. But Xeric felt no relief. He knew what had just happened was not an accident, not a malfunction. It was a test. "Admiral," one of his officers called, breaking his thoughts. "All systems are fully restored. Orders." Xeric exhaled slowly. "Send a full report to High Command. I want every detail logged and analyzed. And put the fleet on high alert. That ship is still out there." The message was relayed across the fleet, but unease hung in the air. The warships, which had once surrounded the mysterious vessel with overwhelming firepower, now felt small and powerless. The question remained, where had it gone? Then an alarm blared. "Sir, we're picking up energy fluctuations." Xeric's eyes snapped to the screen. At the edge of the sector, space itself seemed to bend and twist. A black void shimmered, ripples spreading outward like waves in water. Then it reappeared. The unknown warship had returned. But this time, it was not alone. Beside it, another ship emerged from the darkness. Then another, and another. 5, 10, 20. The fleet watched in horror as an entire formation of warships phased into existence. "Impossible," someone whispered. Xeric's hands clenched into fists. This wasn't just a rogue vessel. This was a fleet, a force unlike anything the galaxy had ever encountered. Then the message came. "The warning is over. Now, you will understand." The bridge of Admiral Xeric's flagship fell into a suffocating silence. Every officer, every crew member, every soldier aboard the fleet's warship stared in shock at the impossible sight before them. The single unknown warship was terrifying enough. But now there were dozens. A full battle group, emerging from the void like phantoms, their dark hulls reflecting no light, their presence an undeniable declaration of power. Xeric's instincts screamed at him to act, but what could he do? Every weapon in his fleet had been rendered useless in an instant the last time they tried to challenge the unknown vessel. Would attacking now change anything? "Sir," a trembling voice broke the silence. "They're moving." The dark warships began to spread out, positioning themselves with deliberate precision. They weren't attacking. They weren't broadcasting threats. They were simply establishing control. "They're cutting off our escape routes," another officer whispered, fear creeping into his voice. "Sir, if they wanted to destroy us, they would have done it already." Xeric knew he was right. This wasn't an ambush. It wasn't an invasion. It was a message. A new transmission flashed across every screen. observe, learn, do not repeat past mistakes. And then, a display of power unlike anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. The largest of the dark warships turned toward a distant asteroid field. Without weapons fire, without visible energy beams, the entire field simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not scattered, erased. One moment it was there, the next, only the cold vacuum of space remained. A collective chill ran through the fleet. This was beyond warfare, beyond technology. This was a force so advanced, so overwhelming, that the very laws of physics seemed to bend to its will. Zarek's hands tightened into fists. This was no enemy they could defeat. This was a power they had no choice but to understand. A heavy silence hung over the bridge. No one spoke. No one moved. Every officer, every soldier, every experienced warrior aboard the fleet had seen destruction before, but never like this. The asteroid field had not been blasted into debris. It had not been vaporized. It had been erased from existence, as if it had never been there at all. Admiral Zarek struggled to control his breathing. His mind raced, trying to make sense of what he had just witnessed. This was not war. This was not the power of an advanced civilization showing dominance. This was something else. "Admiral," a voice cut through the silence. It was his communication officer. "We are receiving another transmission." Zarek forced himself to respond. "Put it through." The words appeared across every screen. "The galaxy has forgotten its place. We are here to remind you." A slow, cold dread spread through the fleet. Zarek could feel it in his bones. Who were they? What did they want? The dark fleet began to move again, but not toward them. Instead, the unknown warships spread out, their formations shifting, their silent presence suffocating. Then, without warning, they vanished. No hyperspace jump, no energy surge, just gone. A tense moment passed, then another. The bridge crew remained frozen, waiting for the next impossible event to unfold. But nothing came. The fleet was alone once more. Zarek released a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "Get me a connection to High Command. Now." "Sir," an officer said, his voice uneasy. "What do we tell them?" Zarek hesitated. Then, slowly, he spoke the only truth he knew. "The galaxy has made a mistake, and now humanity is here to correct it." The fleet drifted in stunned silence. The enemy, the unknown human warships, had vanished as suddenly as they had appeared. No one dared to speak, as if breaking the silence would somehow bring them back. Admiral Zarek's hands trembled slightly as he gripped the console in front of him. His crew looked at him, waiting for orders, but for the first time in his long military career, he had no idea what to do. "Sir," one of his officers finally spoke, "should we pursue?" Zarek let out a slow breath. Pursue? Against a force that could erase matter from existence without firing a single weapon. Against a fleet that had effortlessly disabled their entire armada and left whenever it pleased. The question itself was absurd. "No," he said. "We're leaving." There was a pause, then a flurry of activity. Engines powered up, navigation systems were set, and the fleet prepared to retreat. But even as they turned away, Zarek felt the weight of something unspoken. Something had changed. The balance of power in the galaxy was no longer what it had been. Every admiral, every leader, every race that had once thought of humanity as a weak, forgotten species would now have to face the terrifying truth. Humanity had returned, and they were not the same. Zarek's officers worked in silence, their faces pale. They all knew what would come next. The High Command would demand answers. The ruling empires of the galaxy would react, some with fear, some with arrogance, and some with desperation. And humanity would be watching. Zarek turned to his communication officer. "Send a message to the fleet. Full speed to Central Command. We need to warn them." The officer hesitated. "Sir, warn them about what?" Zarek looked at the empty space where the warships had been. His voice was grim when he finally answered. That war is no longer a game we can win. The fleet moved at full speed through the void, but no one felt safe. Admiral Xeric sat in silence, staring at the star map before him. His officers avoided looking at him, each lost in their own thoughts. No one wanted to admit the truth, but it was clear in every nervous glance, every hesitant movement. They had not escaped. They had been allowed to leave. Xeric clenched his fists. This was not how wars were fought. There had been no demands, no ultimatums, no negotiations. Humanity had not come to bargain. They had not come to conquer. They had simply shown their power and left the galaxy to decide what to do next. "Sir, incoming transmission," the communication officer said, his voice unsteady. "It's from them." The bridge fell into silence. Xeric took a slow breath, put it through. The message appeared on every screen. No voice, no face, just cold, undeniable words. "We are watching." The fleet's officers shuddered. What did it mean? Was it a warning? A promise? A threat? "Sir," a technician's voice broke the silence. "Long-range scans show something unusual. Systems across multiple sectors. Communications, defense networks, energy grids are failing. It's spreading. Sir, it's as if they're shutting down the galaxy piece by piece." Xeric's stomach twisted. Humanity wasn't attacking. They were demonstrating control. He turned to his officers. "Prepare a full report. The galaxy's rulers need to know what we saw. They need to understand." He stopped himself. He already knew the truth. The galaxy had dismissed humanity for too long. They had seen them as weak, as insignificant. Now, they had learned the truth. Xeric's voice was steady when he finally spoke. "We are no longer the ones in control.